The War with Grandpa is a 2020 movie starring Robert De Niro and Uma Thurman and directed by Tim Hill. You'll be relieved to hear this is not in fact a sequel to De Niro's Dirty Grandpa. It's a children's movie in fact, with the main character a kid called Pete, played by Oki Fegley, who gives a pretty strong performance. He might be one to watch out for in the future. He carried himself pretty well in the film. The War with Grandpa was shot around 2 years ago and has had at least 3 failed releases, which might give you an indication of the film's quality. Pete's granddad, played by Robert De Niro, is a bit of a maniac, getting into fights at supermarkets and stuff, and Pete's mum, Uma Thurman, decides it's high time that Grandpa De Niro comes and lives with them, as she fears for his safety, seeing as though how old he is. The setup to get Grandpa in the house is pretty dumb, since he looks more manly, hardcore and macho than anyone else in the film, and Uma is worried about De Niro's health and well-being, and that's the reason why they don't have him sleep in the attic. And yet in the film, they have him on rooftops and ladders and stuff doing DIY. Maybe someone more timid looking like Mike Rylance might have been better for the role than De Niro, but to be fair, they definitely weren't going for a timid grandpa in this film. Anyway, Mum and Dad decide instead of putting Grandpa in the attic, they'll give him Pete's room. And Pete is none too happy about this, and he decides to declare war on his granddad, setting traps for him and pulling pranks on him to get him out of the room. Grandpa decides to return the favour, and we get a series of elaborate, goofy slapstick shenanigans until it all goes a bit too far, and we end with a lovely, gooey, family-friendly, warm ending where we all live happily ever after. For De Niro fans, and I am one, which is why I watched this film in the first place, I'd just like to confirm that this is De Niro firmly in paycheck mode, where he has a bit of fun on set and gives a semi-decent performance where he doesn't have to try too hard. Fresh off successful turns like in Joker and The Irishman, which was his best performance in years, De Niro is back to doing shitty films no one wants to watch, like The Bagman and Grudge Match. The first and most important thing you need to know about The War with Grandpa, which is crucial if you want to actually squeeze a morsel of enjoyment out of the thing, is that it's a kids' film. I mean a proper kids' film. Like, the people who are most likely going to enjoy the film are 4 and 5 year olds. That's the kind of age this film is made for. So there's no point in me and you sitting there tearing the film apart when it's made for children just out of their nappies. Then we'll be the ones who look stupid. The movie is juvenile. Most of the jokes don't work, the pranks are stupid and the story is cheesy. Most of the jokes involve De Niro falling on his arse or Uma Thurman going skits out of her mind. It wasn't that bad. I thought the kid did well. It was fun to see De Niro, and it did make me laugh a few times, mainly because Christopher Walken's in it, and he looked like he turned up to set drunk out of his mind and high as a kite. The adults in the movie were acting quite eccentric, and it was fun to watch them embrace the silliness of the film. But the scenes with Pete's friends and bullies in school were painfully cringeworthy. None of the jokes clicked. The best scene in the film was where the old phobies like De Niro and Walken fought the kids in an intense dodgeball grudge match. It was pretty fun and daft to see Walken and De Niro, 2 guys who gave us one of the best acted scenes in cinematic history in the Deer Hunter's Russian roulette scene, finding it hilarious and an absolute win when they successfully throw a dodgeball at a 12-year-old's balls. The movie is a bit cynical. Maybe that's the wrong word to use, too strong, but I guess it's made for today's cynical kids who grow up committing mass murder on their PlayStations, as the kid basically abuses his grandpa. And it's not like in Home Alone where we can laugh with him because the victim deserves it, because the grandpa is actually a pretty swell guy. The story template isn't bad, and it did have potential to be a really good family film, but ultimately it isn't really ambitious. There is a touch of realism in the film. Like, there are a few scenes here and there of the grown-ups talking about parenting and understanding their children, and essentially what the film is a kid acting like an asshole for much of the runtime, even though the grandpa takes genuine steps to get close to his grandson, much more so than I imagine many of the grandparents of the kids watching the film. He even takes care of the oversized high schooler bullying Pete, and the kid does realize in the end that he's been acting like an idiot. So it's not a film that has a bad message or is teaching our kids inappropriate things, like a lot of movies these days. I imagine if someone like Christopher Columbus in his prime got his hands on this story, it could have been a family favourite of the 1990s, something like Matilda, Casper, Jumanji or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. You don't really see films like those made anymore, so I give the film credit there, but the quality isn't really good enough to put the film in the same sentence as those, even if the intention is there. I give the film a 5 out of 10.